Business School is the 16th episode of the 3rd season of The Office. This is directed by Joss Whedon, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And it's a pretty decent episode. It's definitely not one of my favourites, but in general, I quite enjoyed it. And there are 3 parts to the narrative, and I'll talk about each of them in turn, and then I'll see if I have some personal highlights as well. So part of it focuses on Michael and Rainn, part on Pam, and then part on, I guess, Dwight and Jim. And I'll talk about that one first, actually, as I think it's my favourite part. Dwight finds animal stool on the carpet, so he leaps onto this table or cabinet, very impressive, and he finds a bat in the ceiling. And everybody has a different reaction. Stanley's was very, very funny. Angela said, "Poop is raining from the ceilings," which I rather liked. And Jim sees an opportunity. He happens to mention to Dwight, kind of in passing, that he was bit by the bat. And then he starts to act like he's becoming a vampire. And I think there was one really interesting moment here. I mean, the whole thing was interesting. But he picks up some bread from Karen's desk and pretends that it burns him. And she says, "This garlic bread is cold." And I just thought, if that was Pam would have played along. Pam would have realised what Jim was doing. And this is not the first time we've seen Karen either completely oblivious to what Jim is doing or not willing to play along. And I don't think she's right for him. I know she's not right for him. I know Pam is. We'll come back to that in a moment, though. And this part of the narrative concludes with Dwight having a very awkward and violent scene with Angela, actually. And yeah, it was not a bad way to conclude it. I didn't think it was the most satisfying ending to the Bat story, but nevertheless, I enjoyed it. And as I said, I think it probably is my favourite part of the episode. Then we have Pam. And Pam says, "I'm really happy to be back with Roy. I'll be honest, I didn't expect this to happen. I know at the end of the previous episode, Phyllis's wedding, Pam and Roy left together, but I didn't think it would start anything back up again. I really didn't. So I was actually really surprised by that." And she's showing some of her artwork at an art show, and Roy, to his credit, turns up and brings his brother. And he was pleased that he brought his brother, but nobody from the office had arrived. It's kind of like he's trying to find brownie points to make him seem like he's doing all of the right things. And it makes me think he's not doing the right things because he wants to, but because he doesn't want to lose Pam again. I don't think his motivation is right. I don't think he wants to treat Pam right. I think he wants to look like he is. I don't know if that makes sense, but certainly that's where my head's at. And then Michael turns up, and Michael looks at this drawing that Pam has done of Dunder Mifflin, and there's a reason why he gets emotional, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. But he asks to buy it from Pam, and he says to her, "I am really proud of you." And she hugs him. And I think in that moment I realised that Pam is not being honest about anything that she is feeling. She's obviously not being honest about how she feels about Jim. I don't think she wants to be back with Roy. I don't think she's happy at all in any aspect of her life. I don't think she's necessarily miserable at Dunder Mifflin, but the fact that Jim is there is definitely making it slightly more uncomfortable for her. So I don't think she's in a good place at all, and I think she needs to make some big decisions, because it's not a good direction in which she's going, and I'm keen to see what happens there. And then we come to Michael and Rainn. And at the very beginning, Rainn says, and I quote, "If you bring your boss to class, it automatically bumps you up a full letter grade, so I'd be stupid not to do it." But we have to remember that the boss is Michael, so maybe it was a stupid move. And Michael gives this talk to this class, and he starts ripping out of somebody's textbook, and I genuinely thought he was having a John Keating rip it out moment from Dead Poets Society, which he kind of was. Not completely the same, but it was all about living your life and learning from life rather than just going by what the textbooks say. So kind of a similar message. And then people start asking him questions, and we find out that Rainn had said in a presentation in a previous lesson that Dunder Mifflin would be obsolete within 5 to 10 years. And Michael is hurt very hurt by this, which I can understand. To be told that your entire world, basically, is going to be obsolete within a decade is going to hurt. Was it wrong of Rainn to say that? I don't know. It's a difficult situation. He was just giving a presentation on the future of companies like Dunder Mifflin when they're up against big companies like Staples, and the fact that it's an increasingly paperless world. So I don't think he was wrong, but I think you're treading on thin lines if you start to talk about your own employment like that. So a bit awkward. I don't think Rainn was completely out of order, but I don't think Michael was either with his reaction. And in the car, he told Rainn to pack his things. And I will say that shouldn't be a sackable offence. I feel like in the UK that wouldn't be a sackable offence. We have much stricter employment laws here, which is great. But Rainn obviously thought he was getting fired for this. And it turns out, no, he's being moved to the annex. And Kelly is very, very excited about this. And, well, we'll find out what happens there with Rainn. And, hey, that means Jim's old workspace is free. Maybe Jim will move back there. I don't know, but that would be quite nice to have things back pretty much the way they used to be. Unfortunately, we need some forward movement with Pam and Jim. I don't feel like this was necessarily a step backwards. I think I mentioned in the previous discussion that it seems like we were making one step forward and two steps back. I don't think this is necessarily a step back. I just don't think we haven't moved forward at all. And now it's really awkward because I don't want Roy to break Pam's heart, but I don't want Pam to be with him. So I need her to realise that Roy is not right for her. I'm sure there's somebody out there who would be great for Roy, but it's not Pam. But I don't think Pam has the confidence to realise that she's worth more than that. So what, in my mind, needs to happen is Jim needs to make the first move. Jim needs to confess how he feels to Pam, and Pam will realise who she's meant to be with. That's the only way I can personally see this situation completely unfolding and getting us to where we need to be. But we'll see. I've been wrong with every prediction that I've had so far, so I'm probably wrong about this one as well, but I'm excited to find out. And Business School was not a bad episode. Personal highlights, absolutely Jim pretending that he's turning into a vampire. Absolutely loved it. And Michael saying he was proud of Pam. And of course, the reason why he particularly loved that picture was not just because it was Dunder Mifflin, but because it was on paper as well. And it was just, it kind of embodied everything that Michael loves and everything that Michael stands for. And it was a beautiful moment. And I don't really have any personal highlights from Michael and Rainn, but that's not to say I didn't enjoy it. Not a bad episode. Looking forward to finding out what happens next. And Business School is a pretty enjoyable episode of The Office.